what you earn, the amount of what you get to keep from the amount that you earn is determined by the state. The state will determine how much of your earning actually gets to you. And it determines this by the tax rate. By adjusting the tax rate, the state will determine how much you get to keep. And in terms of measurements and calculations that have been done, it has been calculated that for most people, from the richest to the poorest, we get to keep only 40 cents in the rand of what we have earned. To put this in perspective, in the times of the past, the tax collectors of the king would go out once a year to collect the taxes, and they would go to the farms and they would collect 1/10 of everything that was there. So for every 10 sheep they would take one. For every 10 barrels of wine they would take one. That goes to the king. Can you imagine the situation if when these tax collectors went out, they took 6 of every sheep and 6 of every barrels of wine? I can tell you what would have happened. There wouldn't have been a single person left alive to return to the king. And that is what we are experiencing right now. Think about this in another way. If you have a maid or someone who works for you, and at the end of each month you take your entire salary and put it in the hands of this individual and ask that individual to decide how much they will keep and how much you get to keep, would you in fact be working for that person, that maid of yours, or will that maid be actually working for you? So obviously, when you look at the situation as it exists today with regards to our income and the state actually owns everything that we earn. In fact, the law goes so far as to state that the state has the right to keep 100% of your earnings. And there are criteria laid down for which this can apply. For example, during times of war, when the state requires more funds, it can keep up to 100%. And obviously, though the state would like to do this, it doesn't, because if we have to give everything in tax, everybody will stop working. But it doesn't change the fundamental principle, and that principle is we do not own what we earn. So as far as our earnings are concerned, we don't own it. What about our assets, our buildings, our land, our motor cars? Your property may belong to you as you know it. You may say that my bond has been fully paid off and I have this title deed that says I am the owner. How do we decide whether you are really the owner of that property? In order to understand ownership, we need to understand what are the properties, what are the characteristics of ownership, and then to determine whether we have those characteristics of an owner. If we don't, irrespective of what the title deed says, we would not be the owner. If you are an owner of any property, you will know that every month you have to pay rates. Now, if you owned something and it belonged to you, it meant you owed nothing to anybody on that particular item. If I say I own this pen, I don't have to pay anybody anything for the use of this pen. I can use it, I can keep it. There is no cost to me. But as you know, every month you have to pay rates on your property. And if you don't, you can be thrown out of that property. So you've got to ask yourself, if you own it and it is yours, how could anybody throw you off that property? Surely there is a dichotomy here. So if I asked you, why are you paying those rates? And I have often asked that question, and the answer I get is, well, you know, there's all these services that we have to pay for, that have to be paid for, the maintenance of the road and all the services we get. So I say, what services? You know, we get our water and electricity, but don't you pay for the water when you use it? And don't you pay for the electricity when you use it, and your garbage removal and your storage removal? You've already paid for that. So what is the rates for? And if you're talking about the maintenance of the roads, you are already paying for that through your taxes and on the levies on petrol. So why an additional payment? In fact, if you look at it closely, you will realize that that rates is actually a rental. You are paying a rental on that property. And what the state is in fact telling you again and again, which people fail to recognize because they fail to look at it and think about it, that that property belongs to the state. It doesn't belong to you. And every month you have to pay a rental for it. And you can see this quite clearly. For example, if you had decided to improve your property, made a bigger wall, put bigger lights, and remember, what you are doing is not increasing the services to your property in any way. You may have put pavings in your driveway. No additional cost to the state. Yet, you will find your rental, your rates will increase. Why? Because it is a rental, and that property belongs to the state. And since now the property that you are occupying is more valuable, the rental that you're going to pay is going to increase. Now we've got to ask ourselves, is there other evidence that this property is actually rental and not ownership? One of the features of ownership is that you may occupy and use it to the exclusion of all else. If somebody has the right to enter your property without your permission, that person has the rights of ownership, which means your ownership is not complete. The state can send any of its agents into your property whenever it wants to without your permission, even overruling your objection. For example, a policeman, which is an agent of the state, can come under the authority of a magistrate, which is another agent of the state, and search your property and confiscate items in your property without your permission. That is only possible if the state has the rights of ownership. You may well say, but you know, we need this, because this is what we've been told all along. You need this for the police to be able to come into your property, because how are they going to maintain law and order? I mean, if they are investigating a crime, how do they search for evidence unless they have the right to do this? Don't mix things up. If we are the owner of that piece of land, it means that nobody can enter it without our permission. The fact that the others can come in means our ownership does not exist. Now, the question is, can law and order be preserved in the absence of the violation of our ownership? In other words, can law and order be maintained in the presence of true ownership? And I say yes, it can. If you had committed murder in full view of the public, and you ran and you were chased by the police and you ran onto your property, and now the police cannot enter your property without your permission. So they cannot enter your property to arrest you.